Welcome to another deep dive. Today we'll be exploring excerpts from Kenneth Grant's Hecate's Fountain, alongside some intriguing imagery, and right off the bat, this book dives into some seriously weird territory.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Think secret lodges, rituals with snakes,
Yeah.
vivid hallucinations even.
Okay, getting a Raiders of the Lost Ark vibe here.
That's not far off, actually.
Eh,
But there's also a deeper exploration of magical concepts like the key and kalas, which
we'll get to those, I'm sure.
definitely.
Yeah.
So are you ready to explore the fringes of human consciousness and this idea of something called the Mauve Zone?
Let's unpack it.
The book opens in a lodge with a pretty intense history. I mean, we're talking roots in ancient Egyptian practices, ties to Aleister Crowley's system.
A lot to unpack there.
Mm.
What's fascinating, though, is how the lodge leader, this priestess named Lai, blends it all with an Eastern magical tradition. It all revolves around the coup,
The coup. Hold on, I need a refresher. That's
a venomous snake,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Symbolizing both creation and destruction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, now I remember. So is it possible they're trying to harness this duality, like, through their rituals?
It's a compelling idea,
Yeah.
especially with all the emphasis on the kalas, venoms or essences they believe have serious magical potential.
Okay, so we've got this Mauve Zone, a realm or state of consciousness outside of normal space and time. And maybe these kalas are the key to access it. Because right from the start, the book connects them to this ritual where visiting priestess Mira has all these crazy visions.
It seems so. And the book suggests these visions are tied to the Mauve Zone. They happen through a magic mirror.
I'm picturing something straight out of a Disney movie.
More like a horror film, honestly.
Yeah.
We're talking strange creatures, glimpses into different historical periods, even hints of Lovecraftian energies.
Now that's interesting. Like what? Give me an example.
Well, there's this one vision with these mummy-like figures but with tentacles, described as something way older than ancient Egypt.
Like really ancient.
Grant makes it sound like they come from the same period Lovecraft was hinting at with his fungi from Yuggoth.
Wow, okay, we're talking pre-human history then. Are these visions warnings, or are they trying to show Mira something?
It's a question worth considering. They definitely point to forces and beings outside our everyday understanding. Another vision, for instance, shows these hooded figures emerging from a black abyss. Their robes actually absorb light instead of reflecting it.
Okay, that's creepy, like they're sucking the light out of the room.
Exactly. And they radiate intense cold despite the room being warm. They kind of shimmer in and out of existence, too, not entirely physical.
Dude, that's giving me chills. Straight out of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The comparison fits. Grant describes them as only partially present in our reality. Like the Mauve Zone allows for a blending of dimensions. And that idea is strengthened by the shifting colors within Mira's visions.
You mean the blue for space, gold for the sun, red for the Scarlet Woman Babylon.
And green for the Mauve Zone itself.
So he's creating a whole cosmology with these colors representing different planes or aspects of existence?
Precisely, according to his interpretation, of course.
Right, right. So we've got this Mauve Zone, which might be accessed with these kalas. Do you think that's what the lodge is trying to do with their rituals?
It's definitely a plausible interpretation. And it makes me think of the story of Jack Parsons, a real-life rocket scientist and occultist who worked with Crowley Grant. Links his work to the Mauve Zone, too.
Parsons? That's a name I haven't heard in a while. He was heavily involved in rituals to invoke Babylon, right? That powerful feminine entity from Crowley's system.
That's the one. And Grant suggests that Parsons was inspired by his Scarlet Woman, Cameron, whose beliefs really do seem to align with the Mauve Zone concept.
In what way?
She had this sevenfold formula for magic.
7? That's almost biblical, like a magical exile.
Well, she believed in 7 years of wandering, invoking a 7-pointed star. All sorts of things centered around that number. Plus, there's her prediction about Earth's destruction, which connects to the Maon at the end, according to Grant. And that emphasis on the number 7, it's also associated with the Qliphoth, the shadow side of the Kabbalistic tree of life. So maybe a darker path to the Mauve Zone.
The Qliphoth. Now that's a deep cut. For those unfamiliar with all that, could you give us a quick explanation?
Sure. The Qliphoth is often described as the shadow side of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Not necessarily evil, but it represents the untamed raw forces in the universe. The raw potential that could be harnessed for good or ill.
So could Parsons, through his work with Cameron and their focus on 7, have been unknowingly tapping into this darker side of the Mauve Zone?
It's a possibility Grant raises. Like he's suggesting you can stumble onto paths to this realm even without those specific lodge rituals, sometimes with consequences.
So it's not just one path then?
It seems not. And Grant drops little hints about other ways to access the Mauve Zone. He mentions rituals called sticks of trance, where they use sticks to trace paths for energies and entities.
Sounds like they're creating magical ley lines.
Doesn't it?
So we've got these rituals, multiple pathways, and this whole idea of the Mauve Zone as a realm outside normal perception.
Yeah.
How does Grant connect all this to Nuit, the star goddess from Crowley's system?
That's where it gets really interesting. He connects her directly to the Mauve Zone, suggesting she's more than just a goddess of the night sky. He interprets Crowley's Book of the Law to mean that Nuit exists outside of space and time, even linking her to Lovecraft's Yuggoth, or Pluto.
So he's saying Nuit, this central figure in Crowley's system, is something even grander and older than these Lovecraftian horrors.
Yes. And he goes even further, saying that her word, according to his interpretation of the Book of the Law, is the entire universe. Almost like the forces governing the Mauve Zone are connected to Nuit's will or being.
Okay. My brain is trying to keep up. So the Ku and Kala's visions of pre-human entities, rituals with sticks, and now Nuit as this cosmic force tied to the Mauve Zone. It's a lot. Where do we even go from here?
Well, next we'll be diving into Grant's analysis of the Book of the Law through this Mauve Zone lens. He unpacks its verses, extracts hidden meanings related to these realms and beings. It's a very unique interpretation, even for those who know Crowley's work.
Oh, this is getting good. Grant is known for his, shall we say, unconventional interpretations. Ready to see how deep this rabbit hole goes?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the Book of the Law, not exactly an easy read. What's Grant's take on it?
Well, he offers a reading very much colored by his Mauve Zone ideas. Sees the Book of the Law as revealing a cosmology that goes even beyond traditional Kabbalah or Thelema.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. He's saying it's not just about interpreting the text, but that it reveals the actual structure of reality.
That's what he's suggesting. And he uses specific verses and that numerical symbolism to back it up, like that concept of Nuit beyond Yuggoth we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
He uses that phrase to argue that Nuit transcends even those Lovecraftian entities, Yuggoth itself, which is Pluto.
Hold on, so Nuit isn't just this goddess of the night sky, she's something even bigger.
Far grander, a cosmic principle that comes before and includes all of creation. Quite a departure from traditional Thelemic views.
Definitely. But Grant always pushes the boundaries. So is he saying that the Mauve Zone itself is like a manifestation of Nuit's power?
That's the idea. A realm where the laws of physics and time as we know them break down.
Okay, that's fascinating. So not just a hidden place, but an expression of this fundamental cosmic force. What other clues does he pull from the Book of the Law?
He gets deep into the numbers, connecting specific ones to the Mauve Zone, like the number 5 representing the 5 points of the pentagram, and 25 associated with the 25 tunnels of Set.
Tunnels of Set. What are those?
Pathways described in some traditions, connecting the hidden realms that Grant thinks might lead to the Mauve Zone.
Okay. Makes sense. If it's outside our normal understanding of time and space, then the way to get there would have to be pretty strange too.
Exactly. He also points to 46, the numerical value of the word atom in Hebrew Kabbalah, representing humanity.
So 46 is like a code for human potential.
That's how he interprets it. And of course, he brings up 66, which we've talked about in relation to the Qliphoth.
Right, the shadow side of the Kabbalah. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
He connects 66 to this idea of space seed, which he then links to the May Ion, the end.
The end of everything. Like, he's saying accessing the Mauve Zone through the Qliphoth could actually be dangerous.
That's the implication. Like it's the destructive side of the Mauve Zone playing with fire.
So the Book of the Law is like a puzzle box for Grant, filled with clues about the Mauve Zone. He's not just trying to understand it, he's looking for instructions.
Good way to put it. But he always reminds us that accessing this zone isn't just about intellectual understanding. It requires the right rituals, the right practices, and most importantly, the right guidance.
Right. We talked about the dangers of approaching it without the proper safeguards. Not something to take lightly.
Exactly. Grant stresses the importance of the Holy Guardian Angel as a guide and protector when working with these forces. Without that connection, you're vulnerable to the chaotic and often destructive energies.
And that brings us back to Bemel's encounter with Yog-Sothoth.
A story you don't forget easily. So it's not just about knowing the right words or symbols. It's about cultivating a spiritual connection that can protect you in these realms.
Which leads us to another ritual Grant describes that shows just how powerful and unpredictable the Mauve Zone can be. The ritual of the Sentient Mist. It involves a lodge member named Mula and a miniature Haitian village.
The miniature village.
Yeah, remember we talked about that before with Cameron and Parsons. Is there a connection?
The lodge is dedicated to exploring different traditions, remember. This ritual seems to draw on elements of Haitian voodoo, Like they were trying to access the Mauve Zone through a different cultural lens.
Voodoo. So we're talking spirits, law, all that.
They created this sacred space using a diagram of the Tree of Life incense chanting. To invoke the forces they were seeking, Mula, the focus of the ritual went into a deep trance. As the ritual intensified, a strange fog started filling the room.
A sentient mist. What was it like?
Gray describes it as having a mind of its own, swirling, pulsating with energy. He suggests it was like a manifestation of the veil between worlds, the barrier separating our reality from the Mauve Zone.
So the mist was like a bridge to this other realm.
It's one way to see it. As the ritual reached its peak, Mula was totally enveloped by the mist, and she vanished.
Wait, vanished.
Gone. No trace. The other lodge members searched everywhere. Nothing. Then a few moments later, something came out of the mist. But it wasn't Mula.
What was it?
Grant describes it as this monstrous ape-like creature, glowing red eyes, radiating intense heat.
Oh no, what happened next?
It looked around the room and lunged at one of the lodge members. But just before it hit, the mist surged up again, engulfing both the creature and the lodge member.
And then?
The mist clears, and they're both gone.
Just like that.
So Mula disappears into the mist, then this monster shows up, grabs another lodge member, and they both vanish. And Grant doesn't explain what happened to them.
He leaves it as a mystery. Adding to that unsettling feeling about the Mauve Zone, it's like a reminder that this realm isn't just a place you go, it can come to you. And the consequences can be pretty terrifying.
Like opening a door to the unknown and not knowing what's going to walk through? Exactly. And speaking of unintended consequences, Grant describes another ritual that shows the power and chaos of the Mauve Zone. The Thunder Dragon Rite.
Thunder Dragon Rite. The name alone sounds pretty intense. What were they trying to do with this one?
They were attempting to invoke a specific entity, using these things called Vivers of the Void.
Those were those magical diagrams, right? Like bridges to the other side?
Exactly. It seems like one of their most ambitious attempts to connect with those otherworldly beings.
Okay, so did it work?
It did, but not without consequences.
Oh.
The entity they summoned was way more powerful than they expected. The ritual space is described as becoming supercharged. Strange lights, sounds, even physical sensations. It's like the whole environment was destabilizing.
That sounds scary. What happened when it showed up?
Grant doesn't give us a clear picture, but his language is suggestive. He talks about a being of pure energy, crackling with power. The lodge members, despite all their preparation, were totally overwhelmed.
Sounds like they bit off more than they could chew.
Definitely. And Mula, who we saw in the sentient mist ritual, she becomes the focus again. Described as being possessed, her body contorting, her voice changing, deep and guttural. The other lodge members couldn't do anything.
So what happened to her?
The entity eventually left, but it changed Mula permanently, both physically and mentally. The Thunder Dragon Rite is a pretty stark warning about messing with forces you don't understand.
A reminder that even with good intentions, things can go wrong.
Exactly. These stories really highlight the importance of what Grant calls the Holy Guardian Angel.
Right. He seems to think it's not enough to just know the right rituals or symbols. You need this deeper spiritual connection.
He sees it as a mediator, a guide, a protector when you're dealing with these potent forces. Like he can help you access the right pathways and shield you from those chaotic energies.
So how do you find this holy guardian angel, does Grant say?
He draws on all sorts of traditions, Eastern yoga, Western ceremonial magic, but he stresses that the path is a personal one, requires introspection, dedication, a willingness to confront your deepest self.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is. But he believes it's the most important work you can do, especially if you're interested in the Mauve Zone. Without the Holy Guardian Angel, it's like wandering through a minefield blindfolded.
Which makes those stories about Mula and the other lodge members even more disturbing. They were dedicated, but even they were vulnerable to the dangers.
And those dangers really show why Grant spends so much of Hecate's Fountain talking about the importance of spiritual preparation. It's not just about power or knowledge. It's about developing the wisdom and discernment to handle these realms.
It's interesting how he balances these terrifying stories with this message of hope about human potential and spiritual growth.
He does seem to believe that humanity is capable of great things, especially when we connect with the right forces. In fact, he ends Hecate's Fountain speculating about the future, hinting at a new aeon, a shift in human consciousness that'll bring in a new era of magic and gnosis.
A new eon, like a spiritual evolution.
He seems to think the Mauve Zone, with its access to hidden knowledge and power, will play a key role. He imagines a future where the lines between the mundane and the magical blur, and the knowledge of the Mauve Zone becomes more accessible to those who are ready.
Accessible to those who are prepared. That sounds important. It's not just about finding the door, it's about being ready for what's on the other side.
Precisely. And while he knows this transition won't be easy, there might even be conflicts between those who embrace the new and those who cling to the old ways. He's ultimately hopeful. He believes humanity will rise to the occasion.
Well, that's a comforting thought after all that. So what if we learned from our deep dive into Hecate's fountain? We've explored rituals, encountered otherworldly beings, delved into all this symbolism. It seems like the Mauve Zone, with its links to ancient magic, Lovecraftian entities, and primal energies, is a realm of immense power and potential, but also one that's dangerous and unpredictable.
We've seen how even those dedicated to magic can stumble and face the consequences. The Mauve Zone isn't a place to be entered lightly. It demands respect, preparation, and a deep understanding of what you're dealing with.
And maybe most importantly, it requires a connection to something greater than ourselves, a guide and protector in these unknown territories. So the question for you is the Mauve Zone simply a creation of Kenneth Grant's imagination? Or is it something more? Could there be forces and realms of power and knowledge beyond our understanding? And if so, are we ready to face them?